welcome to another edition of the Royal Lions UK podcast, episode 356. Grace Kelly, my name's Matthew Turner, alongside Ashley Soden. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Obviously, very, very, very excited because it's finally here, boys. Week one, we've made it through the wilderness. Somehow we've made it through.
We are, of course, going to be talking the Green Bay Packers game against Detroit, week one, Sunday night, 4:25 p.m. Eastern time. Kick, obviously in the afternoon window over here. We're going to get into that. We're going to go into a bit of news first, and then we're going to be joined by Kyle Senna, who was on with us during the draft. Excellent Packers fan and fantasy football expert, so really looking forward to speaking with him. But first, let's go through the preambles we normally do. Discord channel, please do come and join us there. Best time of the year to do it by now. Links in the live chat. College Football Podcast. It happened on Wednesday. Happened yesterday, on Thursday. Talked about everything that happened from week one in college football and looking ahead to week two. Of course, the week two recap show will be coming midweek next week. Please do like this episode and sub to the podcast, and like our friends over at Lions Nation Unite, Herman Moore's project to bring the best in Lions content creators together. And with Twitch affiliated, YouTube monetized, there's a tip jar down below, and there's a feedback form too if you want to give us any helpful feedback for how to make the show better. Much appreciated. And we'll get on with some news, including some transactions. The Lions have waived defensive end Isaac Ukwi from the practice squad and signed CJ Beathard, the quarterback formerly of, I guess his most famous landing spot is probably the San Francisco 49ers, I would have said.
Yeah, they're in the Jags.
Yes. He is going to be quarterback 3 on the practice squad for the moment. Other bits and pieces, Lions legend Don Muhlbach is Dan's new in-game management assistant, takes over from John Dykema, who's gone to the Jags, and Colton Pouncey has released an excellent article on The Athletic worthy of everyone's attention about the Lions culture and how they've handled the changes in the team this offseason, how they have built for success before it even happened. Ash, your thoughts on all of those things?
So let's start with the last one because it is a really good piece. Obviously, it starts off with discussing the hire and the fact that those major 6 key players now in the sort of hierarchy, have got a little sort of signed agreements about what the foundations of the team are. It's in everyone's office and they're all so close together, sort of that sort of ingrained culture. And then them discussing how Shep got sort of trained up to be a DC, the gradual adding of roles, so helping AG plan first and second down plays, AG making him stand on the sideline in front of him where the DC is, who's got that, he knows that sort of viewpoint, and the John Morton stuff about the trust he has and how wanted he was, and then the fact that he chose here. It's so good. And yeah, if you obviously don't pay for the Athletic, you might have to read it through one or two ways. You totally can't just press reader when you load it up on Twitter and read it that way. Nudge, nudge. But it is 100% worth your time, especially with the news that came out earlier this week as well about the fact that Johnny Morton, when we got him, he was in Carbo. Sean Payton was coursing him there, trying to get him to stay. And then, as it says in both articles, the fact that Ben Johnson called him right after. Don't believe the outside noise. This is not just a standard sort of box standard downgrade on Ben Johnson. This is a guy who's really wanted by some of the biggest minds in this league, in Sean Payton and Ben Johnson, and trusted by us to be that mind for us. The Don Muhlbach stuff, love it. That is someone who obviously he knows what he's doing in this franchise, and he's been in the game situations before. He knows when to take a timeout, when to throw a challenge flag, because he's played in so many goddamn games. He knows these things, and it just shows the trust that, again, that the regime shows in the guys that have been around. Look at Chris Spielman, what he does with the regime under his title. That's what Don does. So now he's an in-game management guy. He's also an informal special teams assistant coach, because look what he does with Scott Hogan had to be fought over a game. I know. And then some of the stuff he does as well in the front office. So just adding to his responsibilities, he could then take that kind of Chris Spielman role over time. And then the transactions, it's a shame for Ukwu, especially since he's put £20 on in the off season to become more of that flexible edge piece for us. That's why in game 4 against the Texans, he could rush from the interior because he's gone from being 260 and kind of a sort of rush end only kind of go to 280 and capable of playing rush end, big end, and on the inside a bit. So it's a bit of a shame that he's gone, but we all knew the team wanted an experienced veteran play caller as QB3 on the practice squad. And CJ Beathard fulfills that, yes. His best days did come in the 49ers where he was in the Shanahan scheme, and we know how QB friendly that scheme is supposed to be. Though, look at some of the guys who flamed out from there, Trey Lance and that. But he's been there, done that. He's been in a load of systems like Kyle Allen. So just treat this like another Kyle Allen signing. Don't expect the world from him. He's not gonna, come in if Goff goes down and lead us to 8 straight games winning or anything. But as a veteran guy to help diagnose coverages in the sort of film watching study, and to potentially come in if in an extreme emergency and just stabilize the boat for half a game because there's injuries, we could do a lot worse, I think.
In terms of starting experience, I don't think him and Kyle Allen are actually that much different. And in terms of pedigree, in terms of quality, I don't really have much to split them either. If I'd heard either had signed, I would have been equally as moved either way. So the fact that it has been Allen and then Beathard, if it was Beathard and then Allen, it really wouldn't have bothered me either way, to be honest. They're similar guys for me, not the most mobile. Both have some mobility. Beathard can, I don't know, it's like Allen. He makes the odd terrible decision, but he's actually reasonably accurate with the balls that he throws.
Yeah, exactly. And as I say, Shanahan scheme, he's been under Doug Peterson as well in Jacksonville for a bit. Variety of schemes, and sometimes they just need an extra guy in the clipboard holder just to be there, and he can do that.
Let's address the elephant in the room very slightly. We heard that Zadarius Smith is signing with the Philadelphia Eagles on a 1-year, $9 million deal. Had a few comments in the chat about how we feel about it. How are you feeling knowing that Zadarius isn't coming back?
Honestly, I'm not too phased about it. Like I raised it with you just before we went live. I think it's just part of the reason this has happened is because Philly and Dallas get first bites of the cherry. So because they've played their week 1 game, they are no longer under that rule that if you have a veteran on your 53 for week 1, you fully guarantee their signing. So it's just they were front of the pile in that way. And I think we should have took it. Dan's comments a couple of weeks, I think it was last week when he was asked about it, for granted that the team thinks they're good. They don't need him in. Obviously, it might have rubbed them a bit of the wrong way that he didn't want to sign during training camp and go for everything. We've heard Ant say that time and time again, and that looks to be true. But I also think that we're going to be seeing a lot more of what I'm calling a 3-4 system on some downs, where we will be using the Pat O'Connors, Mickey Wingos, those kind of players a lot more as a sort of big edge at the 4-eye to then shade over Derek Barnes and use him as a sort of stand-up edge rusher and trick teams that way. Like I'm hopefully going to discuss it later. The Packers, one thing that they do is they use those kind of looks, and it might be something they do with Parsons, where they blitz a linebacker and have an edge drop in coverage. Well, if we're doing that, Barnes is the perfect example of that, but you need someone to him to shade off. So we're going to be seeing a load more of those sort of base down looks that we saw a lot on like first downs last year, where it's basically a 3-4. I think we're going to see a lot more of them, and their team doesn't think they need the edge depth. It could be that, as we say this, and then come Monday, we sign Jadeveon Clowney. I would not be surprised, but right now, I don't think it's just the team and him could come to agreement in terms of him signing in time, monetary stuff, in terms of us not wanting to fully guarantee the contract. Remember, that's why we cut him, is because of all the roster stuff that was going to go on with his salary. Just don't think we had an agreement, and so I hope he plays well enough in Philly that he has an impact there, but doesn't play well against us.
He was underwhelming when he played with us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that he would have been underwhelming again. I think it would have been good if he'd come back, because I think we need another edge. I'm not that fazed with him not coming back. He's definitely in the twilight of his career. How much is he going to fall off? Is he going to be worth that money? Those questions we'll all find out the answers to very, very soon. I have my doubts. I'm sure he'll be somewhat good, and that will probably annoy me. But right now, I'm just not that fazed. Let's move on to the game, and I'm going to demo the new graphic that our graphics free stuff that we get actually comes in. So let's have a look at that as I'll press play on this for everyone on YouTube and Twitch. We're talking about Lions at the Packers, 4:25 Eastern Time, Sunday afternoon. There we see Lambeau Field in all of its glory. And in the betting for this game, Detroit are actually underdogs coming into this. It's 23-20. That's plus 115. Green Bay are favourites 27-20 on. That's minus 135. Detroit are +2 on the spread, and the over-under is 47 points, which is on the higher end of what you'll see out there in the market. Detroit games ended around the 50 mark at the end of last season, with their offense being the number one in the league. Obviously, with no balls thrown yet by Detroit, we don't know how that's going to go, neither for the Packers too. Injury report for you guys are out for the Lions. Jamarco Jones, tackle. Linebacker Trevor Nowaski and running back special teamer Sione Vaki are out. The Packers don't have anyone out, but they have lots of people questionable, including the wide receivers Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and Savion Williams, as well as newly acquired edge outside linebacker Micah Parsons, defensive lineman Baron Sorrell, cornerback Nate Hobbs, and safety Zane Anderson. They also have on injured reserve the running back Marshawn Lloyd. Looking at the depth chart, the Packers are expected to be a majority 11 personnel offense, playing that about 70-71% of the time. Quarterbacks Jordan Love, backed up by Malik Willis. Running backs Josh Jacobs, backed up by Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks. Wide receivers Romeo Dobbs, Matthew Golden, and Jaden Reed, backed up by Savion Williams, Malik Heath, and Dontavian Wicks. Tight ends Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, John Fitzpatrick, and Ben Sims. And the offensive line starters are, well, we don't know about left tackle, but we think it's going to be Rasheed Walker, along with Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, and Zach Tom. They're backed up by Jordan Morgan, Donovan Jennings, Darian Kinnard, and Anthony Belton. Looking at the defense, play a base nickel, 4-2-5, with the 4 down linemen, Rashawn Gary, Devontae Wyatt. We think it's going to be Colby Wooden starting at the defensive tackle position alongside Micah Parsons on the edge. They're going to be backed up by Kingsley Enagbare, Carl Brooks, Nazir Stackhouse, undrafted free agent who made the 53 for the 20th straight year for the Packers, and Lucas Van Ness. Also have Brenton Cox and Warren Brinson back there too, Baron Sorrell as well. The linebackers, Quay Walker and Edgarin Cooper, backed up by Tyron Hopper, Isaiah McDuffie, and Nick Neiman. Corners, Keyshawn Nixon and Nate Hobbs, with Javon Bullard in the nickel, backed up by Carrington Valentine, Bo Melton, former wide receiver converted this year, and Kamal Haddon. Safety Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams, backed up by Kitan Oladapo and Zane Anderson. And then the special teamers, the punter is Daniel Whelan, place kicker is Brandon McManus, and long snapper Matt Orzech. Ash, just having a look at that team, looking at the betting, what are your thoughts overall on this Packers team?
It's good, but it still has a lot of holes, more than us. So, yes, they've got quite a lot of good of wide receiver twos, and they've just drafted, obviously, Matthew Golden, who's got the potential to be wide receiver one. But right now, that's a bunch of question marks. Let's say even Savion Williams, who they drafted in the third, I scouted for us in our wide receiver preview. And while he's got a lot of the tools to be a damn good ex receiver in this league, like when he's on and he gets the ball in his hands, he's like a running back playing receiver. He's that good. But injuries and just inconsistency, there's a load of question marks there. The fact that, they're still having a left tackle battle and they haven't really sorted that out, and we're coming up to week 1, so it could be Rasheed Walker, but it could also be Jordan Morgan, who was their first round pick last year out of Arizona. That's a question mark. Even the QB position, so Jordan Love, as much as he's got all the tools in the world, can he finally just sit down and make good decisions? I hope not, for obvious reasons, but he's still a question mark. And then that run defense now, like I go into it more for the game preview article tomorrow that's coming out. It was bad enough last year, and they've just got rid of their best guy. Like, what was the stat that for Kenny Clark playing yesterday for the Cowboys. With him on the field, they held Philly to 2.6 yards a carry. Without him on there, it was 6 yards a carry. What, like, I know they've just got an elite edge rusher, but you've just severely weakened your run defense, especially since your defense is not weighted towards run defense because you've got lighter guys who are more pass rushers than run defenders. And in the cornerback position, like, I did wind up a Packers fan Twitter yesterday by saying it in replying to Talking Time and Talking Grit on Twitter. But when your cornerback room looks like this, and arguably with the way that Rocky Sins looks in preseason, he'd arguably be a starter for them. Like, Nate Hobbs, I really like, but he didn't play much outside last year. It was like 20% of his snaps were outside. Most of the time, he was a slot corner or he was a strong safety. So counting on him to be your CB1, not good. Because Sean Nixon, he's got speed, but he's best as a returner. So you've got a return specialist, and then the backs up by someone who is honestly we don't know much about Carrington Valentine. Bo Melton's converted wide receiver, and then Kamal Haddon been on practice squads. He's been on the Chiefs practice squad and theirs, and then they might call up their seventh round rookie off the practice squad then to fill in. That doesn't fill you with much excitement, does it? If you're a Packers fan, defending against what was one of the best passing attacks last year, and is arguably going to take the next step with all the stuff that's said about JMO, Sam Laporte being back to 100%, Gibbs supposedly being more involved in the passing game. It's good, but this is not the all supreme Super Bowl contender that a load of national and international media places will have you believe. Trust me, it's not just America. BBC Sport over here, sort of our version of the news channels put out thing today saying, does the Micah Parsons trade make the Packers Super Bowl contenders? Over, then they barely mention us in the article. So I put it on our Discord and said, this is why they need to hire me. They are not some unbeatable behemoth now. They've got Micah Parsons. They're still like a bit like Swiss cheese. They've still got holes on their roster for us to poke at.
Yeah, it's interesting because for all I've shat on them, they do have a lot of upside. You know, if Golden is great day one and you do see wide receivers be great day one, it's possible. And Jaden Reed on his day has looked like a wide receiver one. You know, like when he's on. And Dobbs has that in him too. Like, these guys, we joke about them as a collection of wide receiver twos, not Golden, we don't know that yet. But the rest of those receivers, they're all wide receiver twos. Okay, well, what makes a wide receiver two? Either they're consistently at that level, or sometimes they're wide receiver ones, and sometimes they're wide receiver fours, and there's not a lot of in between. And I do think for a lot of those receivers, they are those boom and bust types rather than those consistent receivers. Dobbs certainly has a lot of drops in him, but when he's on form, he's unplayable. And, you know, so I do think that there's a lot to worry about there potentially if things go to pot. The offensive line has always been a unit that's been stronger than the sum of its parts, but some of that came away last year, and I don't know whether they're going to get that back. Zach Tom is an incredibly good right tackle. Elton Jenkins is a great offensive lineman, full stop. I'm not a massive fan of Aaron Banks. I think the fact that Rasheed Walker didn't win the job out the gate, they really tried to give it to Jordan Morgan but couldn't, meant they were open to it, means that left tackle position is just a bit weak, really. And then Sean Ryan is not great. The chemistry is going to be there. A lot of them have been in position for a while. You know, Aaron Banks is the only one, I think, who came in this year. Or I'm going to say that now, and then I might be wrong. Yeah, he came in this year from San Francisco, 4 for 77. And we'll talk about that in a minute with their free agency and draft moves. Josh Jacobs, for me, is absolutely key on this team because I'm not a big fan of Emmanuel Wilson or Chris Brooks. Josh Jacobs is one of the few true bell cow backs in this league. And if he doesn't get going, if we can shut him down, a lot of that where they just become very one-dimensional, and that offensive line I don't think is going to provide him a lot of help. So, got to put it on Love's shoulders and hope he just makes some mistakes, I think. On defense, the cornerback room is laughable. It really is very, very bad. And is that defensive line going to hold up? Like, Wyatt took a step last year, but it was a step from borderline bad to okay. Can he kick on? Rashawn Gary hasn't been good for the last 2 seasons. Yeah. 3 years ago, I think, was when he had his breakout year, got paid, had 80-odd pressures. and he hasn't broken
Yeah,
50 since, or something like that. So,
yeah,
Gary's been borderline lower than average. Wyatt is only coming up to average. Wooden isn't a nose, so good luck with that. And then slotting Micah Parsons on that, you've got to be able to take that defensive line to task.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the best safety duos in the league. Don't let them come into play. Don't worry about those guys. Just run the ball down their throat. Those linebackers, I love Edgar and Cooper. He's going to be the man, but Quay Walker is not great. So you are better in pretty much all departments in this team. Micah Parsons doesn't change that. Go and win the game.
Exactly.
Let's talk about their off-season. In the draft, they took Matthew Golden, wide receiver, at 23 overall in the first round. Anthony Belton, the tackle, in the second round at 54 overall. Savion Williams at 87 in the third round. Baron Sorrell, defensive end, at 124 in the fourth round. He has a sprained MCL. He's likely to be out a few weeks. Outside linebacker Colin Oliver at 159 in the fifth round. He is on the PUP. Defensive tackle Warren Brinson. He's at the bottom of the depth chart, but did make it. He was at 198 in the sixth round. And then Micah Robinson, cornerback, at 237 in the seventh round. He's in the practice squad after not making the 53. And offensive lineman John Williams at 250 in the seventh round. He is also on the PUP, as I said before, defensive tackle Isaiah Stackhouse, who was liked by a lot of people as one of the better nose tackles in this draft, went undrafted and has made the Packers 53. In free agency, 3 major people in, I say major, really 2. Guard Aaron Banks from San Francisco, as I mentioned, 4 years, $77 million. Cornerback Nate Hobbs as their CB1, 4 years, $48 million from the Las Vegas Raiders. And then wide receiver Mecole Hardman, 1 year, $1.5 million from Kansas City. He is on their practice squad, so he didn't even make it to the main team. He is available to come up if needed. They lost in free agency running back A.J. Dillon, center Josh Myers, tackle Andre Dillard, defensive tackle T.J. Slayton. Boy, are they going to miss him. Inside linebacker Eric Wilson, and then cornerbacks Eric Stokes, Corey Ballantyne, and Robert Rochelle. And then, of course, the Micah Parsons deal very recently for 2 firsts and Kenny Clark, and signed to a 4-year, $188 million deal for $136 million guarantees. That's $47 million on average per year. Let's talk about those moves. Do you think, looking at what they've done and who they've brought in and who they've lost, that they are a better or worse team than last year?
For me, slightly better. Because as much as Nate Hobbs is mostly a slot corner, the fact that he, is actually around means he's an instant upgrade on a guy who we didn't list in the outs, but should be there, Jai Alexander, who's obviously gone to the Ravens.
Yes.
The fact that, to quote Ryan from POD, the best ability is availability. Hobbs has that at least, though it is a risk for them. They're taking a guy who, as I say, mostly played slot corner, strong safety for the Raiders last year, and now they're trusting him to be their CB1. He can do it. He's had some really good years in the league. I remember way back, this is just before I started on here, messaging the PFF shows because they went through their all-rookie team and they had Nate Hobbs in over Jerry Jacobs on their all-rookie cornerback team way back. And I was aggrieved by that, and the whole thing was, oh, yeah, well, Jerry Jacobs is a slot corner. I was like, well, so is Nate Hobbs. But anyway, that is a slight upgrade. Aaron Banks is more available and is better than Josh Myers as an offensive lineman. The overall impact on the offensive line, maybe it's a bit of a downgrade because now you're playing Elton Jenkins. Center, is that his best position? I don't know. But for the most part, all the guys they lost were rotational guys, like Eric Stokes, bust, Robert Rochelle, but all these bust. Andre Dillard, God, way back when the Eagles took him, bust. The only guy really there that's going to be a big miss for them, and you kind of alluded to it, is TJ Slayton, because he was pretty much their only other nose that's got some experience. Now, you obviously got Stackhouse, who is a true nose, but you're starting Colby Wooden, who's 285. Carl Brooks is 280. they're not going to hold up against the run. So either you've got to do what the Eagles did yesterday and trust your nose tackle to play 65, 75% of the snaps and hope he doesn't get gassed out. Or yeah, you're going to make your interior really damn light unless you punch the linebackers, in which case it's going to have effects elsewhere. So slightly better in terms of free agency in the draft, but it's not going from, like contender to Super Bowl certainty. It's going from contender to rise a couple of spots to still a contender, but maybe win one or two more games compared to what you would have done before.
Yeah, I think they've got slightly better as well, but I think how much is really small. So Golden is going to take significant reps, and that really defines everything. The rest of the draft picks are not starters, and how many reps guy 2 through guy 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, see in the entire season, if everyone remains healthy. So obviously, if the right tackle, Zach Tom, gets injured and Belton goes straight in, that's going to hit this. So presuming health, I think the amount of snaps that player 2 through 8 sees in the season might be altogether lower than like 300. There's not very many reps coming from these guys. So Matthew Golden is the only significant guy they've taken for me year one. And then Banks is an upgrade, even though I'm not a massive fan of his. Nate Hobbs is certainly an upgrade over anyone they have at corner. But, I mean, the spectre of Jair was still there, but he couldn't really be counted on. And then Parsons, obviously, is a big upgrade over Lucas Van Ness. There's no, saying anything about that. But this team is almost basically the same team as it was last season. It's not measurably better for me. And, this team was good. The record was pretty encouraging if you're going to be a Packers fan. But, you didn't lose any games outside of conference, but you went 1-5 in division. That's not good enough if you're a Packers fan. And I don't think this is putting you over the top. If you compare the Packers draft and the top 3 players for the Lions draft, who had, Packers had better picks. In terms of where they were picking, and they took Golden, Belton, and Savion Williams, and the Lions took Tyreek Williams, Tate Ratledge, and Tesla. All 3 of the Lions players are starters. Day one. And that's the difference between these teams, I think, when it comes down to it. Not just that the Lions were better to begin with, but the Lions have potentially gotten better more than the Packers have gotten better.
And the underrated thing that everyone points at, okay, yes, we've lost some pieces like Ragnar and that, but the one thing everyone forgets, and it does not me off that even national people miss it, we've got better simply by the fact to look how many fucking players we've got back off injury.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue because, again, we've still got Aleem to come back, who, when he's healthy, he's a starter for us. Malcolm, when he comes back, yes, he's technically a rotational guy, but he can fill in all 3 of the linebacker spots. I think he did play some Sam for us last year, and he does special teams. We've still got more to come back. And it's mad that one I know it's an overreaction. Like, Parsons is good. He is good. He is a top 5 defensive player in this league, but the overreaction of the Packers adding him, suddenly getting people from putting them top 10, 15 teams in the league to suddenly top 5. Oh my God, they're going to make the Super Bowl. The only team that can stop him is the Eagles. Does me in.
And with that, we're going to bring in returning guest from Fantasy Six Pack and Going for 2. Kyle Senra's here. Kyle, how are you?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for inviting me. And I come on and immediately hear the name Micah Parsons. So yeah, it'll be a great day to talk about him.
Absolutely. It has been an active off-season for you guys. You don't generally bring in anyone in free agency, and you broke trend by bringing in 2 guys who have 10 million APY. You paid Parsons as well as trading for him, and took Golden. How are you feeling overall about your off-season?
It's funny, the Micah Parsons trade is going to just overshadow everything, because to be honest, I actually didn't like a lot of what the Packers did this offseason. I was hoping that I was wrong in a lot of different regards. I did not like them spending that much money on Aaron Banks. Entering the offseason, it seemed like, okay, the 4 spots in the offensive line, you've got pretty solid starters under contract. you need a new center. Josh Myers was, end of his contract, was a free agent, but he was also awful last year. So it seemed like there was upgrading center was the move to make in the offseason. And inadvertently, they've done that by moving Elton Jenkins from guard to center. I expect Jenkins, for how great of a football player he is, he's certainly going to be an upgrade over Myers, even if center is one of the positions he's actually played the least in the NFL so far. I think right guard is the only specific spot he never plays because he's always at left guard, but he's played the tackle spots more than he has played center, even though I think Elton Jenkins was a center mostly in college. So it's funny that's kind of how the Packers drafted him initially, envisioned him, and throwing him all over the line. And it looks like, okay, now after a couple of years of you're going to be the full-time left guard and that's it. We're not going to move you around. That certainly was the case last year. I believe he only played snaps at left guard. Might have during a game emergency moved to a tackle at some point, but I believe he started every game. I think he started one game at center, actually, if I'm not mistaken, because Myers was out, and he was better than Myers naturally. But by doing that, have they downgraded? Because I don't think Aaron Banks is a better guard than Elton Jenkins is. So now, while they've upgraded center, have they downgraded the guard position as a result of that? I don't know. Maybe Banks can surprise me, but we'll see. So I felt right off the bat that move confused me. I much preferred what, unfortunately, our division rivals did, the Chicago Bears signing Drew Dahlman. It was a lot less money than what Banks made. And if the Packers had just done that, A, you keep Chicago from getting him. That's great. Don't let them improve the line. And B, maybe that's more money to sign another player. Now, ultimately, they had enough money to trade for and extend Micah Parsons. So signing Banks over Dahlman didn't prevent that type of move. And that's mostly like those elite players is what you save cap space for if you ever have cap space. So ultimately, at least it didn't hinder that move. So we can say that, but we'll see. I didn't love the Banks move. The Nate Hobbs signing, you referenced that as well as one of the other expensive players. They needed corners, and the Packers desperately kind of need outside corners. Unfortunately, Nate Hobbs, most of his NFL career has been as a slot corner playing in the nickel, and Packers already have like 4 guys that can play that position. So he's expected to start on the outside and be an outside perimeter corner full time. So can he play that same level that he's played in the slot on the outside for a full season? That's the question there. I like that move, but it is a risk. But that was the one move I understood, knowing that, okay, they really did need to sign a corner. And that was even before they traded away Jair Alexander. Now that that's done, it still feels like they might need another corner. I mean, Hobbs and Nixon, that looks like the outside too. And I think they're both pretty good. Nixon's really impressed the steps he's taken the last few years, but I don't think that's a high ceiling cornerback duo. It certainly feels the best play for the Packers secondaries in the middle at the safety spots.
How do you feel about the Parsons trade, especially losing Kenny Clark, who's been such a big piece of this team for a long time, especially when you guys have always seemed to not worry too much about run defense being a thing that you're prioritizing? That was kind of like a given when he was there. It was kind of like, okay, but he's there, so we don't have to worry about it too much. And now it's kind of all change.
Well, it's funny because I would say Joe Barry never cared about run defense anyway. So like, regardless of Clark or not, that's just Joe Barry's philosophy. But yeah, it's. I mean, even entering this year, I still thought defensive tackle was one of their biggest needs. In that the Packers struggle snap to snap whenever Clark's not on the field over the last few years. He's been so dominant that whenever he's not on the field, teams just attack them, and like that's where the Packers usually allow some of their biggest run plays defensively. So I always felt they always needed that second complement. And not only do they not have that, but they don't really have that guy to replace him in the middle right now. It's hoping Devontae Wyatt takes that next step. They drafted him in the first round a couple years ago. He really started to flash last year and show signs. Okay, maybe he is that answer finally to that second good defensive tackle next to Clark. 2 guys that you could play together and dominate, so that Clark's not always absorbing double teams, or whenever Clark's off the field, you still have that strong presence. And then he got hurt just as he was starting to come on. So it's okay. What you had before that injury, is that just a flash in the pan? Or can you recapture that and make that a full-time play? If so, then yeah, I definitely like that element a lot more. Getting a player like Parsons, I mean, if it seems like Jones wanted that player back. Like they weren't just going to be able to just do it for picks. They were going to have to eat into the talent somewhere. And if it meant giving up Kenny Clark to get Parsons, I still think that's the good move to make. It it's certainly this late in the season wasn't part of the plan. So now you're relying on I think Colby Wooden and is it Brenton Cox right now that's listed as one of the starting defensive tackles. They've and Wyatt as well. Like these guys need to step up. But man, getting Micah Parsons is pretty great. And when you get players of that caliber, you almost can't be picky on terms of what's the cost, or like certainly contract wise or trade wise. The only way you're going to get a player like Parsons is because Jerry Jones is so stupid. So if he absolutely wants Kenny Clark to make it happen, you accept it. Because the one thing is, Kenny Clark, I think by all metrics, but also from the eye test last year, had his worst season. And it seemed like it took him time to adjust to the Jeff Hafley defense, or is it just has he started to fall off the cliff? Because he did certainly look better at the end of the season. So I was kind of thinking more, okay, it just maybe this new defense, he really didn't catch on quickly, and it really took him into like half a season to really figure it out. So then was hopeful for this year two with Jeff Hafley. Okay, Clark's going to be back to normal, but what if that was just a flash in the pan, and maybe what we saw at the start of the year, like that's now Kenny Clark at 29, like he's not the same elite player he once was. If you think that, then it feels like you're almost giving this ticking time bomb to the Cowboys. Like, okay, if Clark really doesn't improve on what he did last year, then really what have the Cowboys gained in terms of making that D-line even better? Certainly, the absence of Parsons isn't going to ever make it better, but based on recording this after the Week 1 game, I mean, he flashed a little bit. I mean, Clark just got there this week, so it's tough to expect him to be playing all the snaps. I know with the Packers, they'd often limit him to anywhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the snaps. Anywhere around 70% was usually where they were capping him snaps wise. It looked like the Cowboys were even less than that last night, but that could also just be okay. First game, let's keep him on key third downs, which they weren't often in third and long. The Eagles, unfortunately, their offense for those of us trying to compete. I'm sure the Lions and Packers can both look at the Eagles and they look strong. We have to overcome them. But certainly getting Parsons will probably help in the long run. Even in the short term, Parsons to Clark. I'd rather have Parsons right now, even if it does leave a weakness in the middle.
How do you think it changes the team? Because Parsons obviously came into the league as like an off-ball guy who can blitz, and that's how the Cowboys played him initially, and it kind of didn't work, and so they blitzed him a bit more, and that worked really well, and he became full-time doing that, and then he played more as a proper edge. For you guys, it feels like he's just going to be kind of a full-time edge, but at the same time, is that I don't know whether that's the best way to use him, or how flexible do you think the Packers are going to be in trying to put him in the best spot? And what does that do to Gary on the other side? Because I think the thing with Gary is that I don't know if you agree with me with this or not, but since he got paid, it really feels like he's taken a step back. And I think that's injury related potentially, but he hasn't had that sort of 80, 90, 100 pressure season that some of the other elite guys in this league have done. And now suddenly maybe he has to be that sort of force guy, run D first kind of can crusher type, which I don't know whether that suits him massively. So like in a complementary sort of way, I'm kind of thinking, how do you set up to make the best of Parsons and not compromise the other bit of your defense that is also you'd love Gary to be that guy too.
Mm-hmm. I think that the easy answer is you said it right off the bat. You probably shouldn't just pigeonhole Parsons into one role. I imagine the Packers right now, the primary design, especially as he's learning the defense, just play defensive end, just rush the passer. Use that skill set, and as you learn the defense better, then maybe we then decide to play him as an outside linebacker as a way to get Lucas Van Ness in. I swear for these, I was thinking all summer, like Parsons or Hendrickson or even TJ Watt. If the Packers send a first round pick or a couple first round picks and Lucas Van Ness, can you get any of those guys and sell them as Van Ness can be that like young defensive end replacement? So I was a little surprised when I saw the trade go through that it was Clark that got traded and not Van Ness. And okay, now you're moving Van Ness kind of basically to a backup role, but maybe you hit the nail on the head there, Matthew, was saying if you move Parsons as an outside linebacker at times, that lets Van Ness get in as a defensive end, and you can get all three of them, Gary, Van Ness, and Parsons on the field at the same time. So I do agree. I think if you just stick Parsons at defensive end all season, you're maybe wasting a little bit of his talent and his versatility. So I imagine Hafley seems like he was a creative guy last year with some of the things he was doing. So I think now he hasn't had all season to plan this. Now he's gonna integrate it, and I expect maybe we'll see a lot more creative things with Parsons later on in the season. would be my guess. So I expect this week one against the Lions, I expect to see him out there. Maybe they just keep him for third downs. Maybe, Van Ness is actually playing a lot more snaps, but they keep Parsons just for third down plays. Just rush the passer for this first week and then expand the role as the weeks go on. So we'll have to see exactly what the plan is week one, but I'd envision you're not just going to play him on early downs and not play him on third downs. Like you brought him there for a reason to be this premier edge rusher. And in terms of the Gary question, I think the best thing for Gary might be having Parsons there if they're both rushing the quarterback, and that's less attention towards Rashawn Gary, and that maybe helps his sack production go up. But I agree with you. If you're just going to say, okay, Parsons is the primary rusher and Gary, you're going to mostly be a run stuffer. We've seen his weakness in the past be the run blocking. He's gotten better as time's gone on, and he's more well-rounded player now than he was certainly earlier in his career, where he was just, okay, just get after the quarterback and that's it. We really can't trust him on early downs. And now he's a full 3-down player. I think as dual edge rushers, I think that can work really well, and that's how you get the best out of both. So I think you still want to have Gary constantly getting after the quarterback on most plays.
Definitely feels like a defense which is going to perform significantly better on third down than on first and second. So I guess the key is going to be getting there, especially if the run defense does take a step back. I don't know. We just mentioned before about Nazir Stackhouse making it, and I mean how many fans he had in the draft process. Borderline, as much as I can be for a Green Bay player, kind of excited to see what he does in the league. Just because I think that could be a nice answer for Kenny Clark leaving, but we'll see. Moving on to maybe some of the other questions about the team. Do you have any lingering kind of questions about what's going on? I mean, it kind of feels like left tackle hasn't quite been sorted yet.
Well, I mean, they've made these draft picks, right? You got Jordan Morgan last year, and then I'm forgetting the name already.
Anthony Belton,
Yeah, Belton. And it feels like at some point they want one of those two guys to be the answer at left tackle. But while Rasheed Walker is there, it sounds like it's just he's the pro who's done it. They still, I believe it's the last year of his rookie contract. So I'm sure the Packers are seeing it as he right now is the best to play left tackle. We're going for it. So we're not worried about developing Morgan or really developing anybody. We just play the best five. Like that's always been the Packers' motto with the O-line is play the best five. And it just looks like Rasheed Walker right now is the best blindside protector. So he's going to be the left tackle starting all year. I'd be shocked if they make the switch at any point. That seems like something where if it's Jordan Morgan's job in 2026, then his first game at left tackle without injury is going to be week 1 in 2026. Like it's not going to be something that they try to transition it this year. Like it feels like with the move of you're already moving so much in the interior now between Banks getting there and now Jenkins at center. I still think Sean Ryan's the favorite at guard. It seemed like if anything, that was the spot where at right guard is maybe where a guy like Morgan, that's how you get into the lineup this year. But it seems like they're just saving Morgan and Beltran as reserves right now. These are still developmental players that we're thinking more about the future than right now.
Makes sense. Okay. Last one about the guys you brought in before we talk about this game. Matthew Golden, obviously first round pick. Your wide receiver core, I think, was billed a few years ago as like, we can throw it to anyone, which is definitely something we did after Megatron left. It's like, it's great, and just spread it out. They're all as good as each other and fantastic. And I think that kind of still remains true, but it's kind of, the expectations maybe have come down. Injury worries with some of the guys, Christian Watson especially. But, it's been hard for anyone to kind of be a consistent receiver. Jaden Reed looks like he's kind of separated himself from the rest of them at being at the top of that group. I think that there was rumours Dobbs was on the block this off-season, but nothing really came of that. And now Golden comes in almost really as a kind of unquestioned hope as the number one guy. What have you heard about him in this camp?
First off, it seems like what receiver hasn't requested a trade or been part of trade talks this year? Like just across the NFL, and like none of them got dealt. So I mean, I think Jacoby Myers just earlier today kind of said it bluntly. I said I wanted a trade request. They said no. I said okay, nothing I can do, right? And so it feels like that was a lot of the cases with any rumors of receivers moving. There's so many more rumors than what actually materialized. I think. It seems like Golden, from all the reports through camp, is that he's progressed well enough that he's going to start for them this year. Like it's Wicks's experience and his ability to separate, as great as it is, not catching very well has been an issue, and through his career hasn't shown enough to keep a guy like Golden off the field if they really think he's the future is now with him. So I expect to, with the way the Packers play 11 personnel so much, the starting three would be Golden, Dubs, and Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed dealing with this injury, though. I don't know how, like, the complaints in fantasy football here is just, man, Jaden Reed just doesn't play enough snaps. As you're kind of evaluating where he should go in drafts, everyone just constantly devalues him because, oh, he just only plays in these certain personnel groupings, and that's capped. It might even be more capped now because of this injury. So it looks like Golden has a chance to maybe run the most routes this year of any Packers receiver. I think him and Dubs are probably the favorites to do that. So just being out there is the first step to getting targets and getting opportunities. And if Golden's worth the talent that the Packers spent a first round pick on, he should be able to get separation and earn those targets from Jordan Love. So to me, when I project the Packers, those are the three I view as likeliest to lead the team in targets: Dubs, Reed, and Golden. And so, everyone loves to talk up Tucker Kraft, but that's another one where I'm not, in terms of you can throw it to anyone. It feels like I could see a 50-50 split this year with Kraft and Musgrave, like where Musgrave really was the guy they favored a lot more when they were both rookies. And last year, Musgrave got hurt so early that it was Tucker Kraft playing tons of snaps, and then by the end of the year when Musgrave came back, everything Kraft had established, they simply didn't want to wreck that chemistry, or maybe Musgrave just really wasn't fully healthy. They kind of kept with Kraft as like a clear, playing a lot more snaps than Musgrave. He's just on the field a lot more. I wonder if this year it reverts back to close to 50-50. So I don't think either tight end competes with Matthew Golden on just a sheer target total. The tight end position might get as many targets, or maybe even more targets than Golden, but I think it'll be evenly split. So I think that this offense is going to run through three main facets. It's Golden, Reed, and Dubs. And I think all three, the way they run routes, and they all kind of, in theory, attack the field at different positions. I say in theory because we don't know yet with Golden. It's like everything we've seen in practice shows him as a deep threat receiver, a la Christian Watson or Dontavian Wicks. So it really does feel like Wicks kind of is now he was the Watson backup. Now it's just morphed to he's the Golden backup. He hasn't had his turn to emerge, and I don't really think he's going to get that chance. At least not yet. Dubs' final year of his contract. So again, the trade talks, maybe that, if anything, that signals his future on the team is very clouded next year. Like they might not be willing to offer a contract that other teams are willing to offer. So maybe Romeo Dubs leaves next year is how Dontavian Wicks finally breaks out. But looks like Matthew Golden is jumping him ahead of the line. They're prioritizing the first round pick, which clearly the GM believed in him. I know Gutekunst loves to draft these athletic score freaks. Like that seems like he's mostly prioritizing that. It's not about the production in college or even the traits. It's how good of an athlete are they. That's definitely, seems like more and more each year that becomes apparent with drafting. So it remains to be seen. I'm slightly skeptical on Golden. I don't know if he's ever going to be as good as what, say, Jaden Reed is, but guess we'll find out if it was worth taking him in the first round or not.
Let's move on to this matchup and just talk about the Packers offense versus the Lions defense. First of all, how do you see that side of the ball going? It's going to be an interesting one because, it was a couple of pretty close games last year on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I imagine the same result we've seen 2 years of Jordan Love through Jared Goff has been split. As great as the Lions have been the last 2 years, the Packers have split the season series each year. So wouldn't shock me if this is a case this year where these teams go 1-1 against each other. And the Packers and Lions history of home road games is also pretty weird. There's definitely years where it's the road teams that win both games. Like that's definitely happened in the past with these. So it's weird to even say I know the Packers are favored right now. They have the home field advantage in this first game, but is that enough? And I don't know. But in terms of how the offense will perform, I guess this is, with Reed hurt, it feels like this is like they're just going to unleash Golden right away. Like no training wheels, I think. So wouldn't shock me if he get like the first play of the game is a play action target to Golden, just to let's see. Let's get him his first catch as quickly as possible, and then so we don't have to worry about it. So I wonder if that's how LaFleur is designing this. And we'll find out. We'll find out real quick if that's the case. Is there something quick and easy designed for Golden? Are you typically that's a lot of Jaden Reed stuff. I know LaFleur loves to make the slot receiver the primary, first read on so many plays. He loves to design plays for the slot receiver so much. So I wonder if we see Matthew Golden play in the slot at all in week one, that tells us right away that, okay, LaFleur is, regardless of anything else going on, he's planning for Golden to be a premier target in the offense right from the get-go. So if they just stick him on the outside, though, that might mean in LaFleur's mind, we still view Jaden Reed as that key matchup guy that we're going to utilize in the most important downs. Or at least he's going to design for what the most important downs are. And I mean, ultimately, it's up to Jordan Love, though. What does he want to do? And maybe he wants to be aggressive and target Matthew Golden, even if the play isn't designed that way. So it's we'll see where he's aligned. We'll say more about how Matt LaFleur views Matthew Golden, but certainly how many targets he gets, that's going to be what Jordan Love thinks of Matthew Golden.
What about the run game? What about Josh Jacobs and that offensive line against the Lions' run defense, where that clearly is a priority for the Lions? I believe they still finished the number one run defense in the NFL last year, although Ash might correct me on that point. But you can do.
We were well in terms of EPA, because I've got all that off. We were 17th.
What?
Yes.
Why do I?
That's on a per play basis, though. You might be total rush yards are probably a lot lower in terms of allowed. Teams are running a lot less against the Lions, right? So
that makes sense. No Lee McNeil, no Levon Zarike in the middle for the Detroit. So how do you think the run game's going to go for Packers?
Well, I think last year we saw them just be one of the run heaviest teams in the NFL, and in the NFL for the last few years too. So I just feel like that was primarily protecting Jordan Love. The knee injury that eventually led to a groin injury, and it just that the whole season was kind of, I would say, shadowed by that. And I think everything from how run heavy they were was mostly from that perspective. So I don't expect them this year to say we're going to be as run heavy. And it feels like the first time they tried it, it worked so well that first impressions are so strong, right? They, okay, your first game with Malik Willis starting, it's against the Colts, who their defense last year was one of the worst in the league. And so when the rushing attack was gaining first downs almost at will on every play, well, okay, we're just going to keep doing that. And it feels like that first impression of how successful it was, even if it wasn't always against the same team, kind of stuck with LaFleur, and they just sort of relied on it. Probably not going to get that first impression against the Lions, as you guys have alluded to. It's going to be a lot harder to run against them. So this does feel like a game where Josh Jacobs' contributions might actually come more in the passing game. If Aiden Hutchinson's full go and to playing at peak performance right from week one, I talked up Rasheed Walker, and I think at best he's maybe a league average left tackle, which that's not easy to do. That's usually a position where it's so easy to get exposed and be shown this, oh man, this guy's really not ready to play left tackle. Walker's at least shown he's competent average left tackle. That's probably not good enough to stop Aiden Hutchinson on most plays. So dumping off to Jacobs might actually be a key part of the passing game as well.
What about Tom, though? Because I believe, based on what I remember, Hutch actually lines up over the right tackle more than he does the left tackle in our scheme. So what about Zach Tom?
Well, that helps the Packers, because Tom's arguably their best offensive lineman. I know he graded out really well last year if you look at the PFF grades, but just from the eye test, really good in pass protection, really strong run game. He gets out in space really well. He really well-rounded offensive lineman that it's the opposite side, but it's akin to what David Bakhtiari used to bring. We've seen a little bit of that from Jenkins in the interior, that type of dominance, but it's been almost 5 years since we've seen that type of dominant tackle play from the Packers. And so Zach Tom, I think well earned and really smart move to sign him to this extension this offseason. And guess what? It again didn't hurt them from also getting Micah Parsons. That's the one drawback of doing it right now is, okay, by doing this right now, do you hurt yourself from if something else comes up, we need to spend money? Well, it didn't. So I think that was just a brilliant move to get him locked up. If he continues his dominant play, I think all pro seasons are coming. I think last year was the year everyone, it seems like with the all pro list, especially at a position like offensive line that doesn't gain stats, so you can't really see it through the season. It's one of those where the writers who voted might look back and, okay, a month after I've got to review the season, maybe that was someone I didn't have on my ballot. I should have. So it sometimes takes those guys a year where the all pro votes come the year after they've been great. So wouldn't shock me if Zach Tom makes an all pro list this year, now that especially with his contract, it gives him notoriety. I wonder if people saw that extension and woke up to, wait, who is this guy? And they'll maybe pay more attention to him this year because I think he was all pro worthy last year. And I think, so the fact if Hodgkinson is more on that side, that definitely gives more confidence. That's the side as the Packers you prefer him to play on because that is their better tackle.
Other side of the ball, obviously the Lions had an amazing offense last year. Swap out Tim Patrick for Isaac Teslar or Khalif Raymond, depending on what sort of play we're going for. No Frank Ragnow. Glasgow moves into centre, all new guards. Against the Packers defense, as we said, defensive line change on a couple of areas. But otherwise, all the guys in there have kind of been in there a while, bar Nate Hobbs. One of the best safety duos in the NFL. How do you see that shaking out? Do you think the Lions are going to take a step back on offense? Do you think it's going to be enough? Because Goff has had pretty good times against the Green Bay defense.
Yeah, I think the Ben Johnson contributions have certainly been a huge storyline this offseason, but you could argue that the Ragnow retirement would be a bigger deal if Glasgow wasn't there. Right? This is a veteran center who's done it before in the NFL, and so it feels like that part of the line won't necessarily take a step back. I mean, he played snaps at center last year for them, and it seemed to work fairly well when Ragnow was injured. So yeah, it really is getting two new guards in, and so does wonder. Do you guys think there's a lot more Jahmyr Gibbs early in the season as these guards are getting better, and you think, okay, Gibbs gives us a better chance on those outside runs. Let's have maybe as a way to get these guards an easier job is you pull them and have them go in space and maybe as opposed to trying to take on these blocks inside against these defensive tackles, and maybe Gibbs features better in that run game than would be more Montgomery early. Do you think that makes sense? Or because the Packers don't have Kenny Clark, you think that's the weakness we have to expose and go after that inside rushing right away?
I think it'll still be a heavy dose of both. Like especially under Ben, but underrated bit of our new offensive coordinator he was here for the install of the Ben Johnson scheme, because obviously that first year of Dan Campbell, it was Anthony Lynn who was our offensive coordinator. We're going to still see pretty much the exact same things, and that's the underrated thing is both our running backs can do it. Like Gibbs, especially last year, showed his ability to run through the tackles, and Montgomery, I think he's always shown in the NFL, is his ability to go outside the tackles as well. So I think it's just whatever concept they see on tape, they're going to smash. If it's the zone plays where, it's more get them in space, they block a gap, they block a sort of area, they'll smash that. But I think based on what I know of our guards, to Tate Ratledge and Christian Mahogany, they both are better gap blockers last year. So I do see us doing more of your inside the tackles, Dave Montgomery sort of style runs, power duo, counter, that kind of thing, rather than outside zone with Gibbs, though we'll still use that. And, we've got James Williams who can do the end of rounds deadly with them. See what happened when Goff had to go out of the Commanders game. Like the one good drive we have was with Teddy Bridgewater handing off to JMO and end around for a 60-yard touchdown. Like we've got so many ways that we can do the run game, and dare I say, go back 10 years to the 2016 run game, quick game, screens, that kind of thing as well, to get the ball outside the tackles if we want to ease it up for the guards as well. Let that pressure come in, attack you with RPOs and screens.
Please don't tell me we threw back to a Theo Riddick-based offense.
Yes, we did.
Oh my God.
Now, Theo Riddick-based offense, but with Jahmyr Gibbs getting those passes, that
Exactly.
does seem a lot better and more explosive.
It does seem a little bit better.
That'll impact a lot higher.
Got a couple of questions from the chat, and then I'll trouble you for a school prediction. Perry just says, what are your thoughts about your general manager right now? He's someone who is highly regarded around the league. I have questions. There are some things that I think he does really well and some things I think he does very badly, and I don't know how that levels out. Does that mean he's average, or does that hamstring you? I can't decide how I feel about him. So how do you feel about him?
Well, I think first off, a week after the Parsons trade, you have to smile on him a lot stronger. I think the things that he has done really well seems to be bringing those outside guys. Like our pro scouting seems to be really strong with Gutekunst in that identifying players that are free agents or available via trade that'll fit really well, that are going to be worth paying. I mean, Xavier McKinney, I really liked the move last year. I didn't think he was going to be like the best safety in the league, first team all pro safety. Like I knew that was I always am optimistic and I know the outcomes, but I didn't think that was the likeliest scenario. So that they identified it really well. He'll fit in this scheme perfectly under Jeff Hafley, and we can use it to his full potential. And sure enough, it was an incredible season, and arguably he was the best player on the Packers last year, frankly. So that's been really good. Now it doesn't mean they've hit on every free agent, but I think that magnitude. Again, Josh Jacobs last year, that was fantastic. Again, one of the best players on offense for them. So when they've hit on those things, the things he does really well impact the team at such a high level, whether it's, again, the signings last year or trading for Parsons. So some of the things he does where it's the weakness, man, third round picks. Oh boy, especially notoriously bad at drafting in the third round. And he's actually made some really good hits in that round. Tucker Kraft, Sean Ryan. I mean, that's 2 starters all last year that were third round picks. So he's shown he's able to do it, but for the most part, it's been a pretty bad round, and it's obvious to see why, because it seems like in his evaluation, the athletic score is the most important thing. How good are these guys as athletes is more important than how they played as football players on tape or how they produced in terms of what the metrics, either the just straight production or the advanced metrics. Like those things, they matter, but not as much as what the athleticism says. And it seems like he sometimes gets blinded by that and is just taking athletes that really aren't great football players.
One more question.
You guys benefit from that. We took Amari Rogers over Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? So it's those are weaknesses of Gutekunst, because that.
If we're talking recent third round picks, the Lions and the Packers, there's a certain, actual best safety in the league that we should discuss.
Branch, right? Yeah, no, It was funny. My former co-host Jesse Hall loved Brian Branch. It absolutely was. Man, we should take him in the first round, and so that was a sore spot for sure. And was that Marshawn Lloyd? Did the Packers take Marshawn Lloyd ahead of him, or was that a year before? It might have been Sean. It might have been the Sean Ryan year, which he did nothing as a rookie. So the first year it looked bad, but again, he's the starting guard.
I can't remember which, but anyway,
it'd be Ryan. Yeah, it'd be Sean Ryan because it's 2022.
So or at least you're getting a starting guard, right? Like those that it's tough to get starting caliber offensive linemen that grow on trees, but yeah, as good as Brian Branch looks, it seems like that. Even his best third round picks, it still feels like they made a mistake and let the Lions get an unreal player.
One more question before we go to score prediction. Lisa De Lorenzo asks, Carl, do you think that Ben Johnson made a difference to our offense? And I'm guessing, Lisa, you mean by him leaving, then are we going to fall back? Or do you think Goff is better than people want to give him credit for? Now, I will say, Lisa, to your point, that Goff was recently voted the 15th best player in the NFL by his peers. So I'm not sure that has translated, at least to the players these days. But I do think, Carl, there's maybe a feeling still out there around the media that Goff is a limited quarterback who has been made the best of by Ben Johnson.
And I think, it's not just Ben Johnson, though. Sean McVay got the best out of Goff, too. But I think in both the Rams and Lions situations, the one thing that becomes apparent is if he has proper protection, you've got a good offensive line, he can make any throw accurately at will at any part of the field. But it's as soon as there's pressure, it's not quite as bad as Sam Darnold, but it's the same type of extremes. I'd say Goff's a lot better at throwing from the pocket than Sam Darnold, but they both, when the pressure comes, it seems like they drop significantly. No quarterback is better under pressure than they are in a clean pocket, but the best ones, they don't let it affect them as much. They find ways to succeed, and it really just feels, as long as Goff has great protection, it should still be good. So as much as Ben Johnson, I think, deserves credit for everything he's done, just as Sean McVay, we talk about him being one of the best minds in the NFL right now, one of the best coaches. When it's been the success, it's been the players, and it's been the offensive line specifically. Having Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell as your tackles, regardless of who your offensive coordinator is, that's a dream scenario in terms of protection. So I think that still looms stronger. And that's why I thought if they didn't have Glasgow, the Ragnow retirement would still probably be more of impact than, say, losing Johnson. You've got a capable center to replace him. You at least know that's going to be, you're going to have a certain threshold, a level of play. And that Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, two of the most talented players in the NFL, having those two alone, it gives Goff two weapons to manipulate. But then he has Sam Laporta, then he has Jameson Williams. So I think the talent of the players that is there is true. Like that Ben Johnson didn't create all those players to be so talented. I guess the one thing I would say is a concern with from Ben Johnson's perspective is maybe Jameson Williams. Did the breakout season last year, was that manufactured by Johnson? I think that would maybe be the one player that's a question to me, because we've seen Amon-Ra succeed no matter what. We can tell how talented Gibbs is. For how, frankly, how bad Jameson Williams was for 2 years, is that something where that would maybe be the one thing where Ben Johnson created that. But so I guess I have a question for you guys to kind of ask about who that third target in the offense is going to be. But like, do you think Jameson's for real, or is that all just a mirage by Ben Johnson?
I think it's 100% for real, because first season of Jameson Williams, you write off coming off that ACL. Second season, injury as well, plus a suspension. Last year, he still had the suspension. He got suspended for the illegal Adderall, whatever it was. But I think that's real because he finally showed that improvement in the route running and the ability to go over the middle. And everything we've heard out of camp ever since we brought in John Morton and we've moved Scott to Montgomery, the guy who turned Antonio Brown into what he was 10 years ago, from our running backs coach to our wide receiver coach, all we've heard is Jemo's been the most impressive guy. Jemo's been the most impressive guy. Jemo's been the most impressive guy. So if anything, I think Jemo's actually going to improve even. This is going to be his true breakout season. Like last year, he did well, broke that 1,000 yards. He's going to get more targets, more design things for him. He's going to be used more in the short and intermediate game than he was before, because that's the thing. I think Ben Johnson didn't trust Jemo initially. He only really used him as that clear out option. And then last year, because he started showing that route running and the ability to hold on in contested catches, started growing. And then suddenly you start seeing him get that 1,000 yards, 18 yards a catch, all these touchdowns. I think it's going to get even better under offense coordinator who comes in. Literally the first thing he says is, can't wait to work with Jamo. He's going to be so impressive. He's going to have a breakout season.
I think the thing that's kind of funny about this offense is we didn't even say Sam Laporta's name. And he's finally healthy. Definitely had a down year last year. First year was fantastic, but he wasn't healthy all season last year. So if Sam Laporta plays as well as we know he can, the thing about Jamo is I think we might hold him back. I definitely buy the uptake being real. The precision in the route running it's night and day from where he was, and the catching is never going to be quite where we want it to be, but he was openly bad at it when he started, and he's gotten to the point where he's reliable, if not amazing. Tesla is instantly better than him at catching. It's quite funny how Tesla is maybe as good as Amon-Ra catching the ball, which is a bit scary, but we won't go into him because he's probably not going to have a huge amount of target share. But yeah, it's I think Laporta is going to have a bounce back gear, and maybe that hurts Jamo a little bit.
I know I do a lot of fantasy football rankings and stuff, and I was admittedly low on Jameson Williams this year, as and my reasoning and thinking was that we saw last year Jamo be that true second target to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I wondered with the new offensive coordinator if that's something that would change, where it would go back to being Laporta, where it's Amon-Ra and Laporta. Those are the top two targets on the team, and Jamo is kind of viewed as the third option, and Gibbs would be there too. As you're like running backs that are just out on the field. You don't necessarily design them catches; they're just going to get them from being out there. Like I don't know if the Dallas Cowboys ever schemed up one catch for Ezekiel Elliott in his career, but he would catch 50 passes a year, but just by being out there. And then that's Zeke's skill set, is just he can play a ton of snaps and just be out there. Pressure's going to come at enough points that quarterbacks are just going to dump off to you. And I mean, Gibbs is obviously so much better that you are actually designing him passing routes, but I also wondered maybe not to the extent that Laporta would be featured this year. So I guess that was my wondering if Jamo would maybe take us actually a step back from last year. But you seem to think that it's full steam ahead. What we saw last year, he's just going to build on that and get better. So
I think he could look better, but production could fall. I think he could have like a 850, 900 yard season, but be an extremely efficient receiver.
Knowing the questions the Packers have maybe on the outside, is week one actually a great way for this new offensive coordinator to test Williams? Like this is okay. I think Amon-Ra versus Javon Bullard. I think you'd still favor Amon-Ra most of the time, but knowing that is one of the tougher coverage spots on the field, you maybe test your luck a little more with Jameson Williams versus Nate Hobbs in his first game playing on the outside full time. Like test that theory. Okay, can he do this really well? And I wonder if maybe it's actually a heavy Jamo game to start off.
Would you have JMO against Nate Hobbs, or would you not line up Keyshawn Nixon
It's-
against JMO? Because at least Nixon could run with him.
I guess you're right, but I also wonder. I mean, what we've seen from the Packers, they tend not to switch it too often. Like it's guys on their own side. So if you like, I feel like that's easier for the Lions to choose what that coverage assignment is going to be. They'll move JMO around to get the ideal.
And it's not like, the guy on the opposite side's slow or anything. It's going to be a 6'5" monster, Isaac Tesla, who had a pretty much perfect RAS. Like, which one's you on the lineup against 5'10" Nate Hobbs, 6'1" Jameson Williams, who, if he ran the 40, probably would have broke the record. Is one of the fastest players in the league. Or do you line him up against 6'5" monster Isaac Tesla, who's never had a drop in, didn't have a drop in college last year and had a perfect RAS. Like,
I mean, Keyshawn Nixon isn't that much taller either, so there's going to be a size mismatch no matter what. Yeah,
he's 6'1", 185. So exactly, either way, they're gonna. It's gonna be fun. That's like, but you buried the lead for that's my third part of my preview tomorrow that I've got written up. I've got like pound the run game. We can neutralize Micah Parsons, but don't forget about the pass game. The secondary's there. Like, I even kind of, accidentally wound up a Packers fan by talking to another podcast about the secondary by calling Keyshawn Nixon a glorified return specialist. So,
you did it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how he started, right? And exactly. To be fair, I think for the fact that he wasn't playing mini snaps to all of a sudden full-time corner role, I think he's played pretty well.
Yeah.
But he was never as good as Jair, let's say. Like, he's still not an elite corner, but right now he might be the best outside corner the Packers have. And again, that's maybe showing that's where the weakness in the secondary is. Because it certainly isn't in the middle. Like I think the rookies last year, Bullard and Williams, for them to have full-time roles from the get-go and look really good. Williams especially excelled. And, Williams, McKinney, that safety duo is going to be for years that where things shine in the secondary. So
yeah, and it annoys me. You've got Katana Hapo just sitting on the bench as well. Like, that's someone I really loved in the draft, and he's your third safety. I would love him here. So, if you love those guys so much, cut him loose. Then come somewhere that will use them.
You say that, but he'd be our third safety too.
We would do free safety looks. That's why we brought in Avante Maddox and that.
And to that point, he's really technically the fourth safety for us. Like, when we do, because the Packers do, because Bullard ends up playing a lot of that nickel corner. So when they're in those nickel packages, it actually is technically a lot of three safety looks for the Packers.
Yeah, true.
Which is again why Nixon and Hobbs are forced on the outside.
There's one more question which I actually just want to get in because I just think it's interesting in the context of the Micah Parsons trade. I'm going to slightly reword it, JS, so apologies it's not verbatim what you've asked. Does the trade increase the pressure on Matt LaFleur to perform this season? If the Packers underperform, is it more costly for LaFleur in terms of whether his seat gets a bit warmer a bit more quickly?
I guess so far the playoff, like the regular season success is evident. His winning percentage is crazy good. So feels like as long as they continue to make the playoffs, that it really won't. So, I mean, missing the playoffs once you've traded for Parsons, that would certainly, I think, put a lot of pressure. And I don't think you get fired over that, but that those thoughts might finally start to enter into the minds of the Packers brass. I think they haven't really questioned it up to this point. They've been pretty happy with what they've gotten from LaFleur. 2 years of Jordan Love. They made the playoffs both years. So I think as long as they continue to make the playoffs from the mind of the front office and the CEO and the some of the ownership group, but the shareholders, they probably seem pretty satisfied with LaFleur, and it hasn't crossed their mind yet to even consider firing him. But missing the playoffs even 1 year, that's what gets the thought going, I think.
Makes
but
sense.
Certainly, I think there's tons of internal pressure to win the Super Bowl. That's evident. Like, these guys want to win it, and I'm sure Matt LaFleur is probably the one putting the most pressure on himself more than anyone else is to win. So you got to think that, the signal to the players and the coaches is, we're giving you Micah Parsons. It's go time now. You got to win. So that's certainly, I think, the mandate is going to be the Super Bowl. But if they don't make it to the Super Bowl, I don't think Matt LaFleur's job is really in question.
All right, time for a score prediction. How do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, again, love to the optimism of the Packers potentially winning at home. I think that I could see this being a high-scoring game just because of the talent. As talented as there are players on both defenses. The depth of talent across the offenses entirely makes me think that it tends to be on the higher scoring variety. So, 28-25 for Packers is kind of like, I would say, is like the minimum. Like, I feel like I wouldn't go any lower than that. It'd probably be higher scoring than that, but I'll say that. I'll play the prices right and not go over, I suppose.
Ash, what do you have?
Lions 34, Packers 20.
I had 34-31 Lions, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to who holds the ball last when it comes down to it. All right, Kyle, have you got any articles coming up or anything on the fantasy spectrum that people should see?
Yeah, so for Fantasy Six Pack, I'm going to start after week one. For the first couple weeks of the season, after week 1, week 2, and week 3, I'll be doing goal line reports, which is basically just going to be usage for players inside the 5. Teams, how often are they running versus passing inside the 5, and maybe highlight the players that seem to be getting those touches or those looks. But once week 5 hits, then the full goal line guide comes out, and that's a weekly matchup I do for fantasy football purposes. I mean, really, it could be a week. It's a way to predict touchdowns. And regardless of if you like fantasy football or you're just a pure NFL fan who wants your team to win, touchdowns are important. So that's usually what are going to lead to wins in both those avenues.
Can I say Javonte Williams has got to be high on that list after yesterday?
I probably will feature him. Yes, and right now the Cowboys two goal line attempts, 2 touchdowns, they're at 100% efficiency, and it's also why I don't necessarily release the goal line guide right away, but give it 4 weeks of data, and it's because it's a percentage-based efficiency guide I'm looking at. I'm looking at offensive efficiency inside the 5-yard line when you're 5 yards away from your opponent's end zone, but I'm also looking at defensive efficiency. How often are defenses allowing touchdowns inside their own 5-yard line? And each week I'm cross-referencing those data points, each offense versus the defense they're playing against, and everything is split run versus pass. So each team ends up getting a goal line score or goal line grade for their rushing offense, but also their passing offense each week based again on who they're playing on defense. And just trying to put all that together and see where are touchdowns more likely to come for each offense. Are they more likely to come via the pass, via the run? I know if I throw usually the odds makers implied totals in there as well as a way to, the teams with higher point totals more likely to score more touchdowns. And so I put that all together and each team gets a grade, but I also think the difference between each team's grade is also very important. Their run grade significantly higher, even if the scores might not be, they might be about average, but their passing score is so low. Well, clearly they're going to be a more likely run team. So it's all about just, again, where are the touchdowns coming from? Trying to find higher end, again, fantasy football outcomes, but real life NFL outcomes require touchdowns as well. So it's a good way to analyze matchups. So that comes out every week on fantasy6pack.net. Also have the Dynasty Six Pack show with Fantasy Six Pack on their YouTube channel. So that's usually my weekly contributions to Fantasy Six Pack.
Kyle, thank you so much for coming on. Great to see you again, and maybe we'll see you later in the year.
Yeah, likewise. I'd appreciate that again too. Thank you for inviting me.
Cheers, Kyle. All right, everybody, that is the week 1 preview show in the books. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Ash, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, let's just go beat up the Cheeseheads.
Our next episode is us being live for the Packers game, 4:25 Eastern Time, or just before, for the play-by-play. Me and Ash on the call, I think. Ash, you available?
Yes, I should be.
All right, and then our review show will be on Monday, September 8th. We'll have the Chicago preview on the Friday evening, so this time next week, September 12th. And then the college football show, it was on Wednesday, looking back at week 1 and ahead to week 2. Next week, looking back at week 2. It was a fabulous week 1 of college football, so please do go and listen to the guys next week, looking back at week 2, as I hope there will be another fantastic week of college ball. You know where to find us on our socials: Royal Lions UK, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and the Facebook group for worldwide fans, Detroit Lions Fans UK, One Pride Worldwide. The website, ROTLUK.com. Plenty of European Lions fans in Green Bay for week 1. So, with my whole heart, I say, boys, go forth and let's slip the dogs of war. We're going to go and beat the Packers in week 1. Thank you, Ashton, to me, and for everyone listening. NFL's here. Let's go Lions, One Pride.
One pride.
Recording stopped.